will to achieve your goals?
Oh, absolutely. Everything is on you as the individual. You can have a great mentor, but if you don't perform, it doesn't matter. You can have a great sponsor, but if you don't perform, it doesn't matter. But if you do perform, it does matter because you're always in the game. You're always, you have options, and everybody wants you on their team if you're a performer. And that's the key in business. So I always like to say the first priority starts with you. You as the individual. How high a standards do you set? How hard are you willing to work? How hard are you willing to prepare? How hard can you think about new ways of doing things better? And so innovation in today's world, because we now live in a real digital kind of world, innovation becomes very important. So like in my career, I was the first person in the world to commercially deploy broadband on fixed line, which everybody now has. I was the first to deploy, when I was running Orange in London, a smartphone, the way that we now know them today. I had conversations with people like Bill Gates who believed that the future was tied to the PC. I said, no, it's tied to the mobile. We made a bet. We talked about it, and, guess what? Mobile came out.
And you won.
Yeah, and when I say I won, it's not so much about he was wrong and I was right, but all of us can innovate. We can all think, and some of us that are, rooted in, let's say, the roots that we have, where maybe you don't grow up wealthy, you don't grow up with, high special pedigree of education, etc., but you have the pedigree of work life,
right,
the pedigree of making your way. Sometimes you can out-innovate others because you think about solving problems in a very basic way, which is the way real people, most consumers, think about using products and services that they want to buy.
So where did you find out in your life about your interest in the telecommunications? Was a choice or destiny or something that life put you in and you had to just manage it?
Yeah, it was more destiny because I actually, when I was in between my undergraduate and graduate school, I married my wife, Corrine, and she still had one more year left of college. And so we wanted her to make sure she finished her college, so I had one more year left of what do I do next? So I decided to get my MBA, but try to do it in 2 semesters, which had never been done. And I had to petition the president of the university. I had to, score high on tests. I had to do a lot of things while at the same time working 3 jobs, while at the same time writing a thesis. And so, so I did all of that. And while I was in between my undergraduate and graduate, I had a internship at a Mountain Bell telephone company where they hired me to try to find a solution to a problem that they had. And so I did. I wrote a paper for them, and they actually implemented it after my summer work. And when I was graduating from college that year, I did not apply because I didn't want to work at the telephone company. I didn't want to because it was a monopoly back then. It was AT&T, the old AT&T. And I was being recruited by other companies, and so I started visiting those companies, and then this company, Mountain Bell, called me up, and they said, would you come in and interview? And I said, well, I'm not really interested in working in telecom. And they said, well, do us a favor, just come in and interview. So they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I started there, and then all of a sudden, my career started taking off because of what I explained earlier. And so I ended up starting at the ground zero at the company, and 25 years later, 26, I became the CEO and chairman of that same company.
That's amazing. So you went from hardworking probably 2-3 jobs to working in one job, but very hard as well, because you have to, go up the ladder and climb into the position of CEO. And you were on top of that company that I think was like, you had like 30 million customers, something like that, 14 billion in revenue. Those are big numbers, aren't they?
Yeah, they were, especially at that time. And I became a CEO at the age of 42. That's
very young. So
it was unusual, and I can tell you it wasn't because I was preferential because I went to Harvard or Stanford. It wasn't because my name was Smith or Jones.
Right.
It was because of the values that my parents instilled of family, of work, hard work, seeing how hard my parents had to work, that gave me that drive that said, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and I'm the one that defines it.
Right. Is there a correlation between studying, like attending a business school, like EV Business School, one of those, big names, Harvard, whatever, and success? Because there are many stories of self-made and even dropout from business schools, people that were very, extremely successful in business. What do you think about it?
Well, I think, historically there used to be a high correlation. If you went to some of those, quote, pedigree schools, Ivy League schools, other schools like that, you ended up generally at higher level positions and all that sort of thing. But now markets are very competitive because we compete globally. And we compete now in a digital world where, some of those advantages aren't the same.
Mm-hmm.
So advantage comes to those who innovate the most and can implement the best. That's from the book of Saul.
Mm-hmm.
and so I really fundamentally believe that. And so you do see a lot of people that come from, you never heard of them before, and all of a sudden they come up with a new company, they're innovating, they're leading the marketplace, they make a lot of money, and they affect a lot of people's lives.
Right. Now, do you consider yourself a successful individual?
Well, I think I've been blessed because of what I've been able to do. I mean, I grew up where I did not ever travel until I was graduating from college and took my first airplane, when I was being recruited for a job. Now I have operated on every continent minus one in terms of businesses and companies I've run. I've competed against the biggest companies in the world. I've been, to many places. I've dealt with kings and presidents and also, prime ministers, and dealt with communism, leader countries, dictator countries, democracies. So I've had a blessed life in terms of all the things that I've been able to do so far.
Right. I am jumping a little bit ahead, but since you mentioned you met so many people, relevant people. Now, out of all of them, is there one in particular that impressed you the most? Between the kings, the prime ministers, so many dignitaries, famous people. Is there one that you really think this is the best individual I ever met?
It's hard for me to say this is the best individual I've ever met because everybody has strengths. And all of us as humans, we have weaknesses as well. So some people have been brilliant and innovation, but maybe they're not good with people. Other people are great leaders, but maybe they haven't been the most innovative people. And so, when you talk about the most impressive person you've ever met, you have to look at a series of things, not just one thing. It's not because you're a billionaire that I would want to be like somebody, and it's not just because I'm the most educated person in the world that I would like to be that person. Sometimes some of the poorest people I've met have been some of the wisest people
Right.
I have met. And so it's a difficult question to answer. So I always answer it in a context. So if you say, who are the superstar business people that, you have met, I'd name 4 or 5. And if you said in terms of political leaders, probably 4 or 5. The current one, clearly not in the United States.
I agree.
If you said who were the, most impactful religious leaders that you've ever met, I could go on in terms of sectors. And then you could say, and what about people you've worked with? I mean, when I was washing dishes, working in a kitchen, I met some good people, right? So
Right.
I don't judge people by titles or dollars in their bank account, but by the dimension of what the question is.
Yeah, so let's go by spaces. So what about in business? The person that you think is really, different and special in business?
Well, I think in today's world, we have a person like Jeff Bezos that has built a new business model, based on the internet, but also logistics, that is a lasting business model that is kind of like, the guy that ran GM after Ford invented the car, but he built a whole way to manage people that everybody, adopted as a way to manage large numbers of people
Right.
for production.
Right.
In this case, Jeff Bezos has built a model for actually selling, products and services over an internet, which, 30 years ago didn't exist, but now exists and is becoming the way that people, do commerce.
Right. Right.
Bill Gates was unique in the sense that he developed that. He didn't invent, but he really developed out this notion of distributed processing, which enabled so much more productivity, so much more distribution of intellectual capacity and other things, for many people. And so, you look at those two people, to me, they're very unique in a business sense, and they've created massive wealth for their shareholders, those that believe in them way back when. Then you have a Warren Buffett, who, I don't personally know, but, he's created a lot of wealth just by being a fundamentalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
By staying true to core values about big brands and lasting brands and good management and things like that. And, he's been legendary because he doesn't jump around, with latest trends. He stays with the long-term trends. And again, he's done very well, and he has core basic philosophies, not too fancy, not too anything. And that sends a message to many people, I think. It should send that, look, it's not how fanciful or how complex you make things. It's really how simple you make things.
Interesting.
When Bill Gates created the distributed processing, he made it simpler to do lots of kinds of work. When Jeff Bezos, built out his platform, he's made it easier for people to buy and have things delivered, for the average consumer, those who wish to do that.
Right.
And so, to me, the elegance of strategy, in business, but also politics and everything else, elegance is about simplicity, in my mind, from the Book of Sol.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Simplicity is kind of efficient. And to achieve simplicity is probably one of the most difficult things to achieve.
Yes.
Right? Because
and that's simply because all of us as individuals, do we like to do complex things or do we like to do simple things?
Right.
Do we want to do things that take up a lot of time, more time than you really have, or do you like to do things that are just quick, efficient, and with the outcomes that you want?
Right. Absolutely. What's the changing subject? What's the most common mistake